Hey, Nick, we need a tagline for the podcast.
No.
Real life opinions. Movie reviews told by fans and not critics.
We're in episode 5. We're in Dial of Destiny. Let's do this. Was definitely not quite what I was expecting. Dial of Destiny. Like I was expecting more Crystal Skull fare, almost, to be honest, and not quite what we got.
No, I was impressed. That's the bottom line. So
I was too. I don't know. I haven't placed it on my ranking quite yet. I haven't quite calculated that numbers. I think I can. I need a second viewing.
yeah, my head's jumped between at least top 3. It's jumped from 1, 2, and 3 in my head, and I think we'll hold off ranking this one.
So the opening this time, I felt like it had a very stark contrast to the other ones. Even, like, I know I spoke, I didn't like the opening to Crystal Skull, but it was still fun. And this was fun, but it was just so dark.
Well, it's almost like it kicked off where one of the other movies would be right in the middle of.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It felt like a different Indiana Jones. Like it didn't feel like the opening wacky adventure. It felt like it was the final chapter of another movie. You're right.
Yeah. And for those keeping score at home, the opening scene, and it lasts a decent chunk of time, takes place in 1944. So Germany is falling. Well, sorry, the Nazis are failing. And you don't get back into present time, which, of course, present time is 1969 because the movies took way back then. So there's no way it takes place in modern times. So, so it did a bit of jumping on its own, but like you were mentioning, the de-aging looked great.
Oh, Nick, I saw this movie with my son Nick, and he's just like, "Well, Dad, did they find someone that looks like Harrison Ford?" And he's like, "No, that's like the CGI did that."
Yeah,
he's just like they did that, like that was computer graphics. Harrison Ford's there. I'm like, yeah. And he almost didn't believe me at first. He thought they found an actor that looked just like Harrison Ford did when he was young.
Well, let's not forget, Lucasfilm is who created Industrial Light and Magic, which is the utmost name in special effects, maybe shy now to James Cameron, but initially it was the cream of the crop.
Well, Star Wars at the time, like that's why he created it.
Yeah.
And like the stunning special effects for 79, like those are good special effects for early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And he did it in 79, right?
Well, I'm pretty sure I'll always go back to the movie. I'm pretty sure T2 incorporated ILM for some of their stuff.
Oh,
because Stan Winston did the creature effects for the Terminator series, and I'm pretty sure he was subcontracted by ILM a few times. So,
well, that wouldn't surprise me. Oh, big gone. So, it was a nice, big, fun fight the Nazis set, eh?
Yeah, I laughed when, I knew from the trailers, but I laughed when it was Nazis, because I'm like, they tried in Crystal Skull to deal with commies instead.
Yeah.
And they realized it just didn't work.
Yeah.
So let's go back to our bread and butter. So
how do we make Nazis work in the 60s? Well, first we got to go back to the 40s where the Nazis were a real threat.
Yeah.
The whole sequence, like, I complained about it being too dark, which made it to me not feel as much fun, but it was a really good action sequence, right? Like everything on the train was amazing. The train full of Nazis after Nazis and Indy's got to navigate through them was hilarious.
He opens the door. He's like, that's a lot of Nazis.
I loved him getting chased through there. And I love the fact that the artifact at the beginning of it ended up being the fake. They had the Spear of Christ. Shout out to anyone that's watched. What is that? That was in Constantine, was it not? The Spear of Christ.
Yeah.
So, they find the Spear of Christ, and it's a fake. I think that's the first time in an indie movie, well, except for the Ming vase on his head in Last Crusade.
Yeah.
I think that's the first fake of the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's funny how it just gets brushed aside. Like, because I mean, thinking about especially like Last Crusade and everything, if that thing was real, that's monumental. But it's not, and then they shove it under the carpet like it was nothing. It was quite funny.
And then it turns out, so we're gonna have some spoilers here.
We're gonna have a lot of spoilers
Yeah,
here.
so just be prepared for that.
If you haven't watched the movie, either watch it first, or if you don't care, keep on listening.
Highly recommend go watch it. Like I've heard like the numbers are very poor for this movie. I don't understand why. Like Crystal Skull, I was looking at it, was the second highest grossing movie of that year. Iron Man came out the same year that Crystal Skull did. Yet this is this is the most grounded Indiana Jones has ever been, and probably one of the most well made. Yeah, it is. I will say it. It's the most well made Indiana Jones movie.
Well, and I think it's exactly what you said. What made it so good is how grounded it was. Even the car chases and the train chases, like everything throughout the movie, they weren't as forced and fake as, for example, Crystal Skull. They felt legit.
Or even like there was some pretty outlandish stuff in like Raiders, even Last Crusade a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And
usually involved a chase.
Yeah. And this movie is probably the best done chase scenes in the whole series, which is saying something.
Well, and it's funny because going back to all the movies, there was a chase. There was the chase in the movies. This movie had like 3 different scenes throughout the movie where there were chases, and they were all edge of your seat. Like they didn't kind of go all in for one and then just throw in the others. They went all in for all 3.
I'd never seen anything like the horse chase at the beginning of the movie before. We've all seen it's in the trailers, he takes the horse down into the subway. But that whole sequence, it was during the parade when the astronauts come back from the moon. And I thought it was the most fascinating chase I've seen in a movie for a very long time.
It was pretty great. First thing that popped into my head, I mean, being the Cameron kind of guy that I am, first thing that popped in my head was True Lies. When he's chasing the guy on the horse and he goes up the elevator and everything like that. But
I've never seen it through a parade like that and down into the subway.
Yeah.
That was the part where I thought that was holy. Like, there's been horseback chases before, obviously, and like you bring up True Lies. I love the elevator scene.
Yes.
It's like, as if nothing's going on. But he jumps down into the subway. I don't think I've ever seen that in another movie. He plays chicken with the subway
Twice.
On the horse. Of course, it's got to end in the cliche. Oh, he gets onto the subway, guesses the bad guys getting there, which doesn't make any sense. They managed to switch terminals.
Yeah.
And get down there, but he's slowly going to the next terminal, and you can't get him.
No.
Like that doesn't make any sense. The convenient subway door opens, but the chase scene in what was the city they were in?
Was that when they were in Morocco? No, they were still in New York. Or is that Morocco?
Morocco's the one I was.
They were in New York. So
the New York was where the horse chase scene. The next one was the Morocco one with the
the scooter thing.
That was so much fun.
Yeah.
And
then ended up being 2 scooters, and then it ended up being the one, and then it was a lot of fun. It totally was. Like I was literally like I went by myself because I'm cool that way, and I was literally like leaned forward in the seat like a little kid watching a movie. So
was there at least a crowd in the theater when you went?
There was half a theater.
There was much less than half a theater when I was there.
I don't get. It's day 2. Like, come on, people. Come on, theater is not dead. Yeah. Fight with us, people.
So, what did you think of the new improved college? Because, well, actually, I've got somewhere in my notes. I love the cut from the, we have the classic Indiana Jones. He's on an adventure, and then in all the other ones. Well, I guess in Last Crusade it's a flashback, right? but all the other ones, it kind of kicks off the adventure, or like leads him into the next thing that he's doing. This one, it was like a 20-year jump, and I could not believe the jarring contrast when we see Indiana Jones sitting on his lazy boy with his freaking feet up and nothing but a pair of boxers. I was just like,
And his neighbors are too loud, so he
yeah,
goes like
he's got the
it's like
old
Gran
man.
Torino all over again. So
That was exactly what I was
get,
thinking of when he
get
was
off my
talking.
lawn.
I love Get Off My Lawn, Indiana Jones.
Yeah. It's
He,
funny though, like you're talking about him being in school there. Speaking of contrast, is he always had his students enthralled. And yes, granted, most of it was because the girls were in love with him, but they always were paying attention. All of a sudden, you've got like fast forward to modern Indiana Jones, modern being 69, and he's doing his speech and he's talking about the whole pivotal artifact of the movie, which is the what's his name?
the Archimedes dial.
Yeah, Archimedes dial.
I'm yawning again.
And the students are bored out of their mind.
Till Helena shows up, right?
Yeah, and then that's the goddaughter in the commercials. Again, you all saw it, but he's like, "Hey, does anybody know this? Anybody? Emmy? It's in this final," and nobody's answering. Nobody cares. And all of a sudden, she answers, and he's like, "Yes." And what about this? And she answers like she's got it spot on every time. And he's like, yes. And you don't realize who she is right away until the scenes progress. So
I love talking to her. It was the first time I've ever seen him like feel like he doesn't have a spark for teaching in all of them, and it made a lot of sense for the character's progression because like this is you can definitely tell the same guy that made Logan made this because it's this like
he's
yes,
good at tail end of career people. So
yeah, he's like, okay, show how life has beaten this person down.
yeah.
And life has beaten down Indiana Jones at this point.
So
But the spark when someone has interest again. And did you notice it was a different college? Because I was like, why does this look so different from
well,
the other
it
one?
looked more modern for the fact that it was 69. But when they allude to like the next scene when he goes into the lounge and they have the happy retirement day little
They
surprise
said he'd
party
only
there
been
for
there 10 years.
yeah, exactly. They said only 10, and that would have been 59. So again, still before like that would have been after Crystal Skull, and
Yeah.
so I mean not that long after. So this could have been where he went right
I
after
think
that.
Crystal
So
Skull was 55.
yeah, something like that.
55,
Yeah,
56. So it was,
and then so then he goes to that school apparently. So
no, it was a little shame they didn't. It was Oxford. Was it Oxford or Harvard? He told me?
Oxford.
It was Oxford. That's what
Yeah,
I thought. They could have used Oxford still, but like, I guess it makes sense that you want to show them like the passion gone.
yeah,
That you go to a generic school like Oxford's kind of like held up here. We don't even know the name of this nameless school that he was at, right? So, but I thought he was made dean in the end of Crystal Skull. Was he not?
actually, associate dean because they were
Associate
painting it
dean.
on the door there.
Associate dean.
Yeah,
Which is why I'm surprised he jumped ship to a different school. But James Mangold's just got to have his beaten down, protagonist, right?
yeah. What's it called? So then, when he goes home, and that's when you see on was it on the fridge? I think it was. There was separation papers,
Oh
and
yeah. Oh,
I saw that, and I'm like, oh, that's not how I want to see Marion written off. And you just see that, and you let your emotions take control. They don't talk about it until later on, and when they do, wow,
well, we'll get to talking about what happens. I like that they address the divorce too, right? Like a lot of them just like, okay, yeah, here it is, yeah. They kind of did that with I was gonna say they kind of did that with his dad in Crystal Skull, where they're just like, oh yeah, we lost dad, but at least they had like the touching. Oh, we're getting to the age of life where it stops giving us things and starts taking it away.
yeah.
At least we had that line in that, but it was kind of like a one-off. This one they actually come back to it a couple different times, and they flush out what happened, right? And it ends up being a bit of a plot point, right?
Yeah. Did you notice when they were showing his house tribute to his dad was on the shelf now,
Yeah.
and it had the wrapped up, like the triangle wrapped American flag, because apparently he served. And I saw that, and I was like, "Are they saying Sean Connery was American the whole time?"
I didn't catch the flag, but I did notice the picture up on the shelf.
Yeah,
Actually, I think I didn't take note of the flag. I had seen it though,
yeah.
right?
Well, this means nothing. I just happened to notice it. So, yeah. So again, like we mentioned earlier, 1969, the year we walked on the moon. Well, the Americans walked on the moon, and now they're
The
back.
day the astronauts came back
Yeah.
was
So now they're
literally when
having a
this movie
parade.
takes
Yeah,
place.
they're that's right in the middle of the streets. They're having the giant parade. The astronauts are there on a float. Like it's obviously a huge deal. It is, and it still is, really, to this day. And what's it called? But it wouldn't be a big crowded scene without another chase scene.
Oh yeah, of course. Before we get talking about that, what did you think of the introduction of the goddaughter, Helena?
It was interesting. Like, I mean, at in the scene where it's still in 1944 at the beginning, you are introduced to Toby Jones' character. I can't remember
Mm-hmm.
his name now, but what's it called? And he, you find out he's like an associate of his, and
Haas. I think I wrote his name down as Oz.
yeah, that's what he did write down actually. But anyway, yeah, so he was his associate in it, and then when you flash
He was
forward
in the
here,
original flashback
yeah,
when uh, when we first see the Dial of Destiny on the train.
yeah, and then what's it called? So all of a sudden you find out that you've got Helena now, like you said, the introduction of Helena. You find out she is the daughter of him and of Toby Jones' character,
And
and
she's kind of the one that kicks off all the case scenes because she comes to talk to Indiana about this dial. And I really appreciate how he's kind of got his own museum in his office.
yeah,
I like instead of going out and searching for this ancient artifact, he's got it at a desk.
he's like, oh yeah, it's right here, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because she was certain that it was lost in the Mediterranean, and he's like, "No, it's right here."
Yeah, I've just got dozens of priceless artifacts getting around. It's no big deal.
Yeah. But yeah, so they get, and then she grabs it, and it's all fine. All of a sudden, these other bad guys come and they're trying to take it, and she runs away and she locks him in the room, and she's like, "Sorry," and then just keeps going, like just a casual, not even like heartfelt, just sorry, and keeps going.
She's very Indiana Jones.
Yeah. But the difference is, and you find out about her character, is she, well, initially led to believe it, she is an opportunist and a capitalist, as she put herself.
Mm-hmm.
So she's doing it for the money, whereas Indiana Jones, like everything, and he said it in the movie again, that belongs in a museum.
Yeah. He said it like twice, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah. I feel like she's a really good, like, besides the obvious differences, I feel like she's actually a really good surrogate Indiana Jones. Like, I hate when they force the gender swap,
Yeah.
but this one worked for me. Like, I don't think the last James Bond movie they tried to do it, and it didn't. It worked okay, but it wasn't terrific. This actually felt less forced when they did Mutt trying to be the new Indiana Jones, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
But I mean, right off the get-go, she's essentially seen as one of the antagonists. So you think right off the bat, oh, she might be a villain in this movie. You don't know. Like, they're kind of setting it up like she might be, and then you don't know. And
I never really had the feeling that she was the villain. I always, maybe it was just because, like, I didn't ever think that she was going to betray Indy. I always kind of felt like they were always kind of aligned, but I guess, like, off at the beginning, she steals from him, right? So
yeah,
and then she tries to auction off the dial, right, for like
it was at 160,000, I think.
something crazy like that, right?
Before, so the actual villain of the movie is a former Nazi who you see at the beginning of the movie.
Nazis,
Yeah.
really?
Oh yeah,
In an Indiana Jones movie?
And I mean, the amazing Mads Mikkelsen.
He is
such a fan
spectacular.
of his. So
Spectacular in this movie.
yeah, he's he's a doctor, but he's a Nazi sympathizer. Like, he's an actual Nazi, but he thinks he's better than Hitler because Hitler made mistakes, and that's why they lost the war. He thinks he's better than that. So,
Did you like how everyone turned out to be a Nazi in the end?
yeah, they just changed coats at the end. There.
Yeah, they just changed it. Oh, hey, we were Nazis the entire time. Like, that makes sense. And of course, they got to have, like, the big indestructible Nazi, right?
Fuck, he was huge.
That dude was massive.
Oh my god. And every time somebody ran into him, it was like running into a brick wall. It's hilarious.
I appreciate how, like, Indy didn't try to, like, fight him that hard. Because, like, yeah,
he knew he wouldn't. Yeah.
Any fisticuffs Indy got in this movie, and it wasn't very many, which I appreciate. Or at least he got in lots in the
He didn't
flashback.
so much get into a lot of fights as he punched people. There was never full-out brawls back and forth. It's he's punching someone to get away, and that's about the gist of it. So,
which, at 80 years old...
Right?
You're not going to stick around for 5 rounds and take on this giant Nazi, right? So that's...
I like when they have him later, and he's... climbing that wall, and he's like, my shoulders hurt, and I can't remember what he all said, but he's just like talking about how he's too old for this stuff. So
yeah, and then Helena's just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna climb around you, and you're complaining about that. Yeah. Why are you just hanging on the side of the cliff there? What are you doing? Is something wrong? Like, no, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, exactly. So the gist of the movie is, so they find this dial, and Mads Mikkelsen has it first, but then Indy steals it away. He's got it, well, but it's broken in half. Mm-hmm. So now they want to find the other half. Indy wants to find it because of his friend and because of the goddaughter now, and the bad guy wants to find it because supposedly merging the two together, you can travel through time. So, there's going to be a shark jumping scene somewhere in an Indiana Jones movie. You just don't know when or where.
Do you think some sort of father figure had like a journal with with the mystery solved, how to find the second piece?
Well, it's funny because it wasn't a journal. It was just a bunch of loose papers. So I'm like, is that their way of not making a journal?
I think Indy calls it a journal, and then she says, "Oh no, I memorized it." So then they don't need a journal,
right? Because
she memorized it. I got a kick out of that. They got to go and they have to find the tomb of Archimedes, who made the dial. Yeah, and that was fun.
Ancient Rome.
Yeah. Was that scene first, or was the eel scene first? No. That was... So, I wanted to bring up how... how Indy hates the snakes?
Yeah. Yeah. I know where you're going with this.
So, they're in Morocco. Of course, Indiana Jones has an old friend. I was trying to figure out who it was at first, and then I was like, that's Antonio Banderas. That's why I know who that is.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I didn't realize it at first too, because I was like trying to figure out the whole time. I thought it was an old actor from one of the other movies. Well, it was Antonio Banderas.
That's hilarious.
And they're about to dive to find this old Spanish... No, it's a Rome wreckage they're trying to find. And out in the water, there's this big splash. And they're just like, oh, what's that, sharks?
Oh, there's no sharks here.
Yeah.
Eels.
and then Indy's just like, oh, eels, that's okay. And someone's just like, well, aren't they like snakes of the ocean?
They're not snakes.
They're not snakes.
Yeah. And then he's like, yeah, just try to avoid them, and if they bite you, lockjaw, it's bad.
The scuba diving scene was good fun.
It was pretty cool. I mean,
I knew the eels were going to play into it.
Yeah. What made it an Indiana Jones movie is no matter how they think they've escaped the bad guys, 2 seconds later, they're the bad guys.
Oh, yeah. Like, how did these bad guys show up in the middle of the ocean? I don't know.
Yeah, nobody knows.
Convenience.
Yeah.
Antonio...
Can't believe I didn't know that.
Yeah. On the boats where we find out a major plot point about Indiana Jones's life, too. I thought they talk about so Helena, the goddaughter, she's asking Indiana Jones like, what would you do differently if the dial's real? If you could go back, and he says the one thing that he would go do is stop his son from enlisting in the army, and it just it hit hard. Like I know he's not a beloved character by any means. Like Short Round probably gets a lot more love than him, which how has he never been mentioned in any other Indiana Jones movie?
Disposable Asian sidekick.
Yeah. And it's not like they've completely ignored that movie because they reference that movie in this one
Actually, a couple times.
Yeah, a couple times, right?
I drank whatever blood.
Yeah, I drank the blood of Kali.
Yeah.
He's just talking about like the old times. It's like who nonchalantly talks about getting brainwashed and drinking the blood of Kali, eh? Yeah.
And at one point he's like, I've seen some things that I don't necessarily believe, but I can't explain.
Which, that's kind of what Indiana Jones has been always about. He's always wanted to be a realist, right? Like, he doesn't want to believe in magic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yet he's seen so much.
But in a sense, it's not magic, it's spiritual. And I mean, there's an argument right there that I'm not going to get into, but...
Yes, this spiritual 1,000-year-old knight that's been living there on nothing but, like, that one fountain.
Yeah.
And dozens of cups. That's
so on a positive note, he didn't dehydrate.
Yeah. Well, he did in the end.
Oh, that's true.
But he turned to dust. Oh.
But yeah, when you find out about he said he doesn't want he would stop his son from enlisting in the army and not dying in the war, and you're like, oh my god, they killed Mutt.
Yeah, and then you find out that's like the reason for the divorce and everything like that.
Yeah, because she couldn't handle the grief, and he wasn't good enough to help her handle, and so they decided best to separate.
Well, and it actually makes a lot of sense, like he was gone for all those years, but Mutt wasn't, right?
Yeah, because she had him in her life the entire time, technically.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it was a hard gut punch, but like it sometimes people just do stuff in movies for doing stuff, but it actually gave a lot of reasoning and reverence to why Indy was doing what he was doing.
No, and that goes back to what you said, the James Mangold factor, because he makes it. You know why the character is beaten and drawn out now.
Yeah. So before we end up on that boat, this is where, to me, in the theater, I was just like, okay, now we're in an Indiana Jones movie. When we get to the auction of the dial, did it feel the same to you? Like, it felt like we weren't in an Indiana Jones movie the whole time. Like, sure, yeah, we had like the train fight with the Nazis, but that was so dark, it didn't feel like an Indiana Jones movie. Mm-hmm. And then everything else was in New York, and Indy wasn't doing his wild escapades like he did. Like, sure, he rode the horse through a subway, but like, there was no swinging, there was no fisticuffs or anything like that, really. Then we get to the auction, in which I do believe is in Morocco.
Yeah.
And we meet Short Round, Teddy,
yeah.
Watching the door to the auction, and Nazis show up, bust down the auction sale, and there's the priceless scene where Indy busts out the whip. Yeah. Probably the funniest scene in the movie, right? I know it's overplayed in the trailers.
They show him whipping around and whipping around. Yeah. It's all fun and games until all of a sudden everybody just pulls out a gun. And he's like, and then he just drops.
It was the most Indiana Jones scene in the whole movie, I thought, right?
It's akin to the Raiders scene, the
opposite,
the gun to the whip.
Yeah, it's just like, I've got a gun, this guy's got the whip and sword, right? No, this time he's got the whip.
And they've got the guns.
Oh, and I forgot to talk about, how do you pronounce his name? Salah?
Sal?
Well, Saul.
Yeah.
I almost cried when I seen him.
It was so good to see him again. And it's funny because, obviously he looks a little older, but he at the same time, like, I don't know if it was my heart seeing it instead of my eyes, but he didn't look any older. He just...
I could tell the age.
Yeah, but like I said, my heart was leading my vision on that one, and he had the red fez and everything like that, and I was like, And he wanted to come along, and that was the big hard part. There is he wanted to come along and go on an adventure because he was in New York, and that's where he was. And he's like, I miss the desert, I miss the sea, and
It makes a lot of sense what he's like for that era to be like wanting to be an immigrant to come back to America and everything like that because they finally established that he's Egyptian because I don't think they ever do
no,
establish that.
I thought he was Iranian. So
I thought he was too. Like I
yeah,
thought he was more in the Middle East, not on
not in
northern.
Africa.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, Egypt's like the corner of Africa, but still,
Well, yeah,
it's right
and
beside the Middle
it's
East.
close to what? Yeah.
Yeah,
But still, it was never truly said, and you love to see a character like that grow old.
yeah. Well,
Everyone else has like died in this series, right?
it's the last of the legacy characters. Well, until the end, and we'll talk about that later. But so like yeah, like you find out in Crystal Skull that Donovan and his dad died,
Yeah,
and so there's those, and of course then again
and we don't talk about Short Round.
yeah, and then with this movie, I thought they would have at least alluded to what's his name, the one that went professor that went crazy there, his friend.
Oh, Oxley.
Yeah.
They never bring up
No,
him either, do
no,
they?
that's too bad because he was a big part. I thought so.
Yeah, wait, in the redheaded stepchild of the series, though, right?
Yeah, but still.
They didn't shy away from talking about that movie, but like, yeah,
Well, the only real alluding to Crystal Skull was the whole mutt thing. Like for the most part, that wasn't a focal point in the movie. Was alluding to that movie. So
Well, I think that was a huge character development, the whole mutt thing, and like, yeah, he really got married at the end of that movie, right? Like that wasn't like an imaginary scene, right?
yeah, no, he's wearing his ring throughout the movie too.
Yeah.
So even though he's going through a separation, it's like honestly, it's like a lot of people who like if the husband didn't want it to happen and they're getting separated, they're usually the last person to take off the ring. So.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was so heartwarming, and he's got a family in New
Yes,
York and
two
everything.
kids that are all hyper and everything. It was cute.
I think those are grandkids.
right. But yeah.
And I love how he wants to go and Indy's begs him not to go because he's old now, right?
And then you see the scene which you see in the trailer. Give him hell, Indiana Jones. And then in the movie, unlike the trailer, they show the follow-up scene where Indy turns around to wave and almost gets hit by a car.
Yeah, like I almost wonder if that was a blooper because like it seems so like it was supposed to be like this big heroic moment and then this car shows up out of nowhere. Loved it. So Helena's totally full Indiana Jones at the auction because she's even got her own little sidekick
Yeah.
named Teddy, who's like practicing to fly.
Except they're like Indiana Jones is a archaeologist, and as much as she's an archaeologist, she is a thief, and he is her thief accomplice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, he's always been like, I'm not a grave robber.
Yeah, which they say in this movie too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
And yeah, she very much is a grave robber. Well, I don't know so much a grave robber. She's all about the artifacts,
yeah,
right?
an artifact robber.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it takes us to that auction where she had, of course, stolen that piece of the dial there, and she's auctioning it off at this table, and people are bidding like mad on it. And then all of a sudden he walks in, it's like, this auction is over. That belongs to me. And then all of a sudden the Nazi guy comes in.
Well,
he's like, it belongs to me.
And
he's like, I stole from you. And then she's like, and I stole it last. It's called capitalism.
yes, the capitalism line was very good.
It's funny though, completely off topic, but Toby Jones' character, every time I think of Toby Jones, I think of Captain America.
Yeah,
and
where he's the Nazi.
Yeah, he's the perfect German. I always pictured Toby Jones as German, and yet in this movie he's British. So, because even her, like, I couldn't quite tell if she was British or what she was, but yeah, so they're British. So,
yeah, and he was speaking German in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, he was speaking along with them. Like, but again, he was like Indy. He was he knew his cultures, and I mean, look how much translations Indy can do. So,
well, apparently only Latin. because he can't speak German. Like, you think he spent enough time in Germany that he would speak a little bit of German?
Maybe he doesn't out of spite. I don't know.
Yeah, he's just like, screw German. I'm not learning this. But Latin, an ancient language that no one's ever going to speak. Hey, I know that. This is like the only time in anybody's life ever speaking Latin in this movie has like come out to be useful too, right? Oh.
So, in the end, they're looking for this thing that helps tell the location of the second half of the dial.
Oh, it's a big thing. Like, it's not magic. It's mathematics.
Yeah,
Mathematics
yeah,
don't
yeah.
lie.
So that's why they did that dive. They went under with the eels and everything, is because that's on that ship is where that artifact was, and
No, that was where the map or
that's
the
what I meant.
little.
Sorry, that's what I meant. The
Yeah.
the artifact that led them to the artifact. Yeah,
Because you got to find an artifact before you find the artifact.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
You know, it's
it's like the necklace in Raiders, right? You
Yeah.
need to find the necklace so that you can find where it is that you have to go to find the arc, right?
or burn it on your hand.
Yeah, or burn it on your head. Because that works.
Question mark. Yeah. But yeah, so they get
Does Toby Jones remind you of that Nazi in that movie?
which like the main one?
Yeah, the one that burns the omelet.
Oh, that not.
They look kind of similar to me.
Toby Jones always
Toby's-
kind of looked like a toad to me.
Well, he's more pudgy and shorter, but I think their faces kind of look the same to me.
Maybe.
Which is why I think Toby works as a Nazi.
Yeah, totally. Again, if you haven't seen Captain America, check it out. He's amazing in it. It was just an all-around amazing movie. Anyway, yeah, so they get to this shipwreck. They go underwater to the shipwreck to get this essentially map to the actual artifact, the doll they're looking for, the piece of the doll. And so they pull it up, and of course the Nazi guys find them and capture them because that's like the ongoing theme in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so he puts a gun to him, and he's like, or puts a gun to, I think it was her actually. Either way, he tells him to translate it, and he's like, I won't do it. And so she's like, I'll do it. I'm not all about the heroic death.
They gotta kill Antonio Banderas.
Oh, that's
first,
right. Yeah, so
I find it
starts out with a knee shot, and he still didn't do it. So then they kill him.
I didn't figure out to the end why they didn't just kill Indiana Jones, because I feel like they had like lots of chances,
Oh, totally.
and then you find out in the end why they didn't kill him, right? So
Yeah. But yeah, so he reads the thing, and it's like, oh, it's going to take you to Alexandria. And
I think
so,
she reads it first.
or right, she didn't want to do the heroic death.
Yeah.
So and takes you to Alexandria, and so they go their own ways because of course they escape, but then they're like, actually, lift this thing. What's it made of?
Inside this map's a secret map.
Yeah, it's like it's too heavy to be wax and wood, and because that's what they thought it was. And so he's like, no, it's too heavy, but it's wax. So he's like, hold on. So he pours some alcohol or lamp oil on it and lights it on fire, and the wax all melts. And now there's a whole new, it's made of gold, little map thing done in a special little language and
Some sort of code on it, right? And of course, the sun's got to line up someplace to use that thing properly.
Conveniently does when they get there. So
yeah, barely an inconvenience.
yeah.
And the Nazis should be going the wrong direction.
But then he's following them with the binoculars, and it's like, oh, they're going west. And so they changed course from Alexandria to where they were going, which was in Venice. So,
Venice. Wait, was it Venice?
because they land in what's it called? The thing they make Syracuse. Because they make that joke that it's like Syracuse, New York. It's like, no, there's more than one Syracuse.
I have some notes here. Oh, so when they get to Italy, you ever seen the movie Luca?
Negative.
You ever seen Luca?
No.
Me and the kids just watched it. Terrific movie, by the way. Totally worth a watch. Reminded me of Luca the whole time. I could not stop thinking about Luca the whole time they're in Italy. It was the era, because Luca was based in Italy in the 50s. It was the same small ocean town. I guess, I kept expecting to find sea monsters
Well, she did live on the second floor.
Yeah.
I live upstairs from you. Yes, I think you've seen me before. Anyway, um, so yeah, they get to the spot where the little map thing takes them, and
And we get a temple run finally.
yeah,
We finally get the classic Indiana Jones temple booby traps and everything like that, right?
and of course, the Nazis are right behind them.
Of course. Well, they figured out all the tricks to get through these things. We're just
Yeah.
gonna slowly follow, like it always happens in these movies.
Yeah,
I like the nods, like the little traps. Like they had the bugs to represent Temple of Doom.
totally.
Then they had like the methane gas to be the kerosene from Last Crusade.
Well, I found it so funny, like when they talk about the methane, and Helena's like choking on it, which makes sense. Like that, those gases are powerful, and Indy's fine.
He's just
chill.
barely
So,
an inconvenience,
yeah.
right? He says like, "Don't breathe." What do you mean, don't breathe?
Yeah.
And she's,
and he's fine.
yeah, 80-year-old super lungs, right?
This is fine.
He's just gone around not breathing for decades,
Yeah.
right? Like he can just like hold his breath indefinitely because he's Indiana Jones.
That's my secret cap. I'm always angry. Anyway,
But they find the rest of the dial. Nazis.
yeah.
Nazis beat him up, take the dial, because of course they do.
And there was definitely a chunk of scenes afterwards, but I felt it didn't really get into something until they get the two pieces together, and he's like, "This is what's going to happen." So it of course clicks together, like all artifacts that are broken apart for thousands of years do.
Well, yeah, I don't understand. Like, oh yes, he smashed this in half, but he
But
smashed
it's
it
perfectly broken.
Yeah, he smashed it so gently that they just like
Yeah,
everything.
there's no
goes-
shards. It's just two solid pieces that go click. It's like Lego. Lego will outlast us all. So.
Did you like how conveniently enough the Teddy, the short round of the show, can like just fly a plane now?
Yeah. Well, and the swimming thing. I can't swim, and then he's forced to swim.
Yeah.
And he's talking to himself like, okay, this is what I have to do next while swimming. I get that, but he was underwater for a long time,
Yeah.
and for someone who doesn't swim, they don't know how to train their lungs. So, dude. But
Well,
it's
and
funny.
He managed to take out super Nazi.
I was gonna
down
say
under
that
the water.
he was the one who took out Big Beast Man there with stealing the key to the handcuffs because the big guy handcuffed him to the little guy there, and
Teddy got captured. I guess you'd say.
by the way,
Yeah.
anyway,
Because of course the kid sidekick
yeah.
gets captured, right? He got captured by the Nazis while being
because he
looked
tried to escape once, and then they capture him back, and so the big guy handcuffs himself to him, and they're crossing a rickety bridge, which you see the first time, you're like, something's going to happen with this bridge, but nothing does. We're like, okay. And then another scene, something happened. No, it doesn't. Okay, and then the third time, you got the Nazis crossing the bridge, and then you've got like the first three of them, or whatever, get across with no problem, and you got the big guy going super slow, and you could hear the bridge creaking, and so I think the kid gives him a bit of a push, and the bridge breaks, and they fall into the water, and they're underwater, and all of a sudden there's like a grate there that it's just enough room to fit the kid through. So he goes through, and he had stolen the key and put it in his mouth because he's a thief, and he ends up unlocking the handcuffs and then locking it back to the grate and swimming to safety and getting out of the way. And meanwhile, off camera, big Nazi guy dies.
Well,
I assume.
you see like the camera shake, like like
And-
so angry, like
and that's
as if
the end.
screaming.
Yeah.
Screaming underwater is going to help you
Yeah,
break that.
He might not even have died of that. It was all the water he took in screaming. So. But yeah, so kid gets away, and meanwhile, Indy and Helena are facing the captors, and
Andy gets the shit beat out of him.
yeah, he does.
Yeah, just worked over. He gets the crap beat out of him a few times in the movies,
Yes.
but like this really felt like, man, they really kicked the shit out of him this time. Like, you feel like he's done for. He's been shot. They beat him up. They drag him off. Like, there's no escaping this.
Now, the thing where they talk about how Toby Jones shot him, I was shot by him. Was he shot in the hand? It looked like it was in the hand, but he sure did a good job using his hands after getting shot in the hand.
I don't remember where he shot him. Right?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So they're facing the Nazis. He's got the two pieces now. The bad guy. He clicks them together, and he's like, "Oh, this represents this, and this will take you to that time." And so they figure out that this is what they have to do, and that they need to get to a plane.
Yeah, somehow or another, Helena's got enough skill on a motorbike, which really reminded me of Mutt again.
Yeah.
Like the motorbike, if in the temple or the crypt had all these nods, then the motorbike scene was the nod to Crystal Skull for me, right?
Yeah, maybe. Hey.
And she jumps up onto the airplane.
Yeah, and then clings onto the landing gear.
Yeah, because that always works, right? That always works.
I mean, I've seen Con Air. It doesn't always work. Poor Dave Chappelle gets crushed.
The kid sidekick just happens to know how to fly a plane because.
Well, and she asked him, "It's like, can you fly this?" He's like, "No."
Oh no, it's
you can do it.
No, I've never flown one of those kind before, and she's just like,
"Have you flown any kind?" But yeah, so
did you notice how he had like the exact same backstory as Short Round? By the way, it's like, oh yeah, he stole from me, and now he's like my helper.
Yeah, there was a 10-second writer's discussion when creating the backstory of that character. So
we need to bring Short Round back in a non-ethnically offensive way.
I mean, he was brown.
Yeah, Short Round was probably ethnically offensive.
Yeah, if nothing else, the name.
And this is the part of the movie that it started losing me. Once they fly off into where the dial sends them to, this is the one part that I didn't like.
So this is where the heavy spoilers begin. So plug your ears and go la la la. So they're going through. It looks for time fissures, is what it looks for.
Yeah.
And so basically a tear in time.
We're not creating time travel. We're going through time fissures. Like,
yeah. And
so okay, sure.
Right
guys.
before they go through, Indy's like, "This was built 2,000 years ago. Things have changed. Things have shifted. It's not going to take you to that time."
That continental drift.
Yeah.
Right?
And the guy, of course, refuses to believe him until the last possible second. He's like, "Turn around, abort." But too late. They get pulled in and they get come out. And you're like, he's like, "Yay, we made it. It's Italy, 1939." And
they're trying to get to
1939, August 20th, because apparently Nazi guy, like the main bad guy, Mads Mikkelsen there, again, like I said, he thinks he's better than Hitler. He wants to actually assassinate Hitler so he could take over and do all the things right that Hitler did wrong so that the Nazis could win the war.
He's seen all of the mistakes. He's seen all of the perfections. He's seen how things could have been done right, was what his quote was.
Yeah. And so he's going to go in there and change things so that the Nazis win. And so either way, they get through this fissure, and you see Italy, and it's definitely old. But as they get closer, they're like, "Wait a second, these boats look old."
They're Roman warships.
Yeah,
not Nazi warships.
So all of a sudden, we find out that they're in what, like 301 BC or something like that.
Whenever Archimedes was alive.
Yeah. So they're like, "Oops!" And so now it proves, spoiler, that time travel is possible with this thing, and here they are.
Now, riddle me this: how was he ever going to use his dial if he had to fly through it in the first place? Because there was no airplanes back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know his grave had an eagle with the propellers on it, but like that still doesn't answer any questions, right?
Well, and it's the same thing like with the grave. They have a lot of lack of better words, hieroglyphics, and there was talking about the dragon that comes from above. And so when now they're in the past in whatever BC and they're coming down with their plane, you hear the Romans below saying it's a dragon.
It's a dragon.
So that's where they got that from. And so it's similar enough to like the hieroglyphics in Crystal Skull there, how People interpret them one way, but turns out they meant something else. So
Mm-hmm. Did you enjoy the time travel element? I
it
know
had
you.
to happen. It
I know
because
your opinion on time travel. Like,
yeah, it had to happen in the movie because again, you can't have an Indiana Jones movie without jumping the shark.
I feel like they should have somehow or another stopped him before it happens. Or and you like alluded, like you look through the opening and then you see that it's the
That
past.
that I could
Is
see.
is the
Yeah.
is how I think it should have been dealt with, and I think they spent too much time in the past. I really like the part where Indiana Jones doesn't want to go back to the future.
No, while they were on the plane getting through, he gets shot in the shoulder and he's losing a lot of blood. And so he's down there and he's like, I've always wanted to be here. I'm not going to make it back anyway. I want to stay here.
Well, he's been an archaeologist, like his whole
Archaeologist?
archaeologic, I
Big word.
dude that looks for old stuff
Yes.
his whole life. So like, it actually makes sense that he wants to stay there. He's been watching this history his whole life.
But
Why
then
not live that history, right?
she alludes to the thing that was never talked about until then that everybody who's watched a time travel movie thinks about. You stay in the past, you're going to change the future. And that's bad. So,
Well,
and of course he said, no, would it be though?
and of course she's like grown attached to him at this point, right?
Yeah, she saves his life twice now. Like at first she was kind of like his own little antagonist. She was kind of like a side, not even villain, but just an antagonist, like I said. And now she's realizing that, he's done so much to save her. And so she's returning the favor and she's going to save him. And she's, like you said, grown attached to him. And so,
I like how I like the return to reality once they're back. I appreciate that. It was still so jarring to me, like seeing Indiana Jones living in an apartment, just like so normal, right?
yeah,
And old and
and
normal.
crotchety.
And I like how we get back to New York and things are pretty much exactly the same, except for one little difference, right?
Yeah, so he wakes up because he wouldn't go back one back. So the whole thing is she punches him out, and then he comes to and he's back into New York in his bed, modern time, well for them. And what's it called? He sees her in the hall. She's like, "Oh, you're awake," and whatever. So he gets up, and all of a sudden, in walks in the kitchen with some groceries. You see someone, and you're like, and he sees her, and you don't see right away who it is, and then all of a sudden she turns around or something, and you're like, ah, it's Marion.
Oh, I was so happy to see Marion.
And again, it is Karen Allen for those concerned. It is Karen Allen. It's great. She's definitely gotten older, but she
Yeah,
is.
you've
So,
definitely seen the years on her. Like in Crystal Skull, she didn't look like she hardly aged a day.
yeah,
Yeah, the years between now and Crystal Skull,
yeah.
she looks like an old lady now. Which makes like she is an old
I
lady
was gonna
now.
say
So
because she
there's
if
nothing wrong with
he's
that.
supposed to be 80. Well, he is. Harrison Ford's 80, so I assume the character's supposed to be 80. And so I assume she's probably close to that age then.
Hmm.
So even if she is a little bit younger, she's still got to be close to it. So yeah.
And of course, Salah comes in with the grandchildren and
Yeah.
everything like that.
And it's a happy, like you knew that this was the ending scene, but it was still beautiful nonetheless. So
Yeah, it wasn't like I hated like the ending in Crystal Skull was both a better ending yet a worse ending. Like I hated like the church thing, but I liked how the music played out in like the hat thing in Crystal Skull, right? But I hated the execution of that. This was a much more somber, and you just like okay, there's not going to be any more adventures after this. That was the feeling of this one, right? Like it
no,
just
and he's like he goes to her and it's like, "What are you doing here?" She's like, "Put away your groceries." And he's like, "No, like why?" And she's like, "I heard you were in trouble, and I heard you were home." And that's the word she used, and that was pretty hard hitting too. So,
Yeah, you see at the
because they're
beginning of the
not,
movie. He's lost a part of himself at the
yeah,
beginning of the movie, right?
like they're not officially back together, but they reenact a scene from Raiders as a throwback. I'm not going to bother getting into it, but um, in the end, though, it sounds like they're willing to work things out and they'll get back together, and that's amazing. And of course, every time he wakes up in his apartment, you always see his socks hanging to dry outside. So, end of the scene, all of a sudden you see his hat is hanging to
Mm-hmm.
dry outside, and the camera starts shrinking, and to just it shows the hat, and you're like, hey, it's the hat. And then of course, hand comes in, grabs the hat, pulls it in, end. And it was just poetic. So,
So, final thoughts, Corey?
it's in my top three. I mean, out of four, it doesn't say much. There's elements of it that make it my favorite. There's elements that make it my second favorite, and it's just
Out of five.
out of five, it's still a solid four.
It's a 3 Indiana Jones out of 4 for me. Because I'm going to stick to that rating system, even though it makes zero sense. Uh, like, the things for me, like, it was, for better or for worse, it was the most grounded Indiana Jones movie. The first half of the act, or first half of the movie, didn't really feel like an Indiana Jones, but it was still a really good movie. The music was lacking for me. Was it lacking for you?
Yeah, the absence of John Williams was felt
Yeah, like this his original score was still in there, but like
barely.
yeah, it was muted almost like, you know, it did, and I think that was what took away from a lot of it for me too, but uh besides that and the time travel thing not really doing it for me, it was an excellent movie. It was top tier. Like, highly recommend anybody going to see it.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, it's the best movie of the summer so far.
Yeah, more you like it better than Mario movie?
Mario was fun, but it was a pretty two-dimensional movie.
Well, I think I enjoyed the Mario movie more, but this is optically a better movie.
Yeah.
Like, it was probably one of the most well constructed Indiana Jones movies, which is like, when you consider what the other Indiana Jones movies are, that's saying something.
Yeah, I mean, as it stands right now, it doesn't look like the box office is agreeing with that, but they don't know what they're talking about. So,
Oh, that's a shame. You go out and see this movie, people.
yeah, take a listen. Take a watch, I should say. And take a listen to us. Remember, find us on Spotify, Real Life Opinions. Check us out on Instagram. Check us out on Facebook. We're everywhere. We're kind of like a bad penny. We always turn up. So,
We'll catch you next time.
all right. Have a good day, everybody.
Is that it?